tonight on Nova, Everest. In 1996, 8 died in a single day. Now, Nova takes you back to explore the effects of altitude on the body and mind.
He had the nerve to walk on Carol's door.
Excellent, David.
And a new drama unfolds. Will the summit claim a new victim?
What's going on, Ed?
David Charles.
Breathing quickly right now won't help you, Carter, and I know this is really scary.
Everest, the death zone. Major funding for Nova is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television.
This program is funded in part by Northwestern Mutual Life, which has been protecting families and businesses for generations. Have you heard from the Quiet Company? Northwestern Mutual Life.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Five and a half miles above sea level, the high Himalayas stand fixed against the wind and clouds. The air is so thin it is not life-sustaining. Within hours, the living begin to deteriorate. But humans come here and struggle for each breath to stand briefly on the highest point on Earth.
It's a living hell. The only way to describe it is an utter exhaustion. You really don't care if you die or if you just sit down and don't go any further.
In 1996, 8 people died in a single day on Everest. Scientists believe many, if not all of those deaths, could have been due to hypoxia, or lack of oxygen to the brain.
Judgment becomes impaired, person becomes confused. They don't even know where they are as it gets worse. People hallucinate. So all sorts of mental changes can take place as the brain starts to become more and more abnormal.
It's a very slow and arduous process. You take a step, you breathe, you take another step. That's all your mind is occupied with, is taking each individual step.
For every 6 successful summits on Everest, 1 person will die. With more people climbing into the death zone, above 26,000 feet, one critical question is how oxygen deprivation affects the brain. David Brashears, a high-altitude climber and filmmaker, has stood on top of Everest 3 times.
It's just hard work. Everything about being at altitude is hard. We go up with the best technology available to us, the best training, and you can still end up frozen to death at 27,500 feet. That's what makes Everest, Everest.
David was making the IMAX film Everest last year when a storm claimed 8 climbers' lives. He helped rescue some, but others were beyond help. He is returning to film and lead an expedition that will explore the effects of altitude on the body and mind.
Everyone thinks that they're thinking very clearly up high, and yet, by virtue of going up into that atmosphere, you greatly increase your likelihood for making an error.
On the early Everest expeditions, climbers trekked for weeks to get to the base of the mountain. Today, they fly into a Sherpa village at 9,000 feet. It will take 10 days to ascend the 9,000 feet in elevation to Everest Base Camp. Base Camp is a temporary city of tents housing 300 people to support 9 expeditions. The accommodations may be crude, but most teams have a satellite link to the outside world.
It looks like there's about 30 people standing there.
David Brashears meets up with his team members and they scope out the route up the mountain.
What do you guys think about the upper part there before Camp 1?
David Carter from Indiana is returning to Everest after an unsuccessful attempt in 1991.
We always put ladders there, and that's the toughest part of the whole ice fall there.
Ed Viesters will be guiding Carter. Considered one of today's premier high-altitude mountaineers, Ed has climbed Everest 4 times, twice without oxygen. Zangbu Sherpa climbed Everest for the 2nd time on David's last expedition. He is in charge of the large Sherpa staff that will support the team. These climbers will take part in a battery of scientific tests that will gauge their performances at altitude. Ed Viesters lives and trains in Seattle. 2 weeks before leaving for the mountain, the climbers joined him at the University of Washington for baseline tests. Dr. Brownie Shaney looks for physiological clues that determine who will perform well at altitude. One determinant is lung capacity.
Is it important to have big lungs? Yes, it is, because in that regard, you can move more air, obtain more oxygen within the lungs that then the blood can pick up and deliver to the muscle tissues.
When we breathe in, oxygen molecules pass through the lungs into the air sacs. Here, purple oxygen-deficient blood cells become revitalized and red with oxygen and are pumped by the heart throughout the body. Dr. Shaney measures the climbers' heart rates and ability to work. Carter is well above average. At the elite level are Ed Viesters and David Brashears.
The elite high-altitude climber can trudge through the snow, break trail, climb up a cliff at their maximum capability for hours. Getting close?
High on Everest, many climbers approach their maximum heart rate just gasping in the thin air.
Okay.
Some may collapse, unable to go on.
Good job, good job.
The amount of oxygen in Carter's blood is measured by Dr. Howard Donner.
Carter, this little machine that goes beep next to you is an oximeter. The top number here is your saturation, which is a measurement of the amount of oxygen in your blood. 100% means that you're completely saturated, which is what we'd expect close to sea level. As you go higher, this number is going to drop. This lower number is your pulse, and you see you have a nice slow pulse at 63, which is normal for you resting. And as you go up in altitude, a normal response is to see your pulse rate go up.
Carter is now given a decreased level of oxygen to simulate going to high altitude. His body strives to get more oxygen. As Carter's blood oxygen saturation falls, his breathing increases and his heart speeds up, trying to pump more blood made red with oxygen to his organs. Over time, more oxygen-carrying blood cells will be produced to carry the oxygen where it is most needed, to the muscles and brain. These physiological changes are called acclimatization, and they enable a person to survive at high altitude.
You're getting a little bit higher altitude, you feeling all right? Okay.
Due to this sudden exposure to high altitude, Carter's oxygen saturation plummets. He will ultimately pass out from the lack of oxygen to his brain.
We've found some abnormalities previously in high-altitude climbers.
Dr. Peter Hackett addresses the climbers on the effects of decreased oxygen to the brain.
One of the more pressing questions in high-altitude medicine is, does climbing to extreme altitude cause brain damage? And we're going to be looking at that in a number of ways. One is by MRI scans. Some work indicates that some climbers who go to extreme altitude without oxygen do come back with slightly smaller brains. If cells of the brain actually die, the brain will get smaller. That's what happens with strokes and other things that cause brain cells to die. So we'll look at the volumes of the brain by these special scans. These are unusual people, and they're going to a very unusual place. So there's some opportunities here. David and Ed have been to altitude many times, and we might expect them to react a little bit differently than David Carter, who is a relative newcomer at these kind of extreme altitudes.
I've lived by the river for 20 years, and only twice before.
Psychometric testing will reveal subtle changes in the climbers' abilities to process information as they go higher.
What we will expect to see is that there's a slowing in speech. There'll be a slowing in reaction time. We may see a lot of misspeaks. They won't say things quite the way they would at sea level. There'll be slurring and hesitation. This one's a little more difficult. This time what you're going to do is go down the columns and you're going to say the color that you see. You have to disregard the word you see. Tell me the color that the word is printed in. Okay? Go ahead.
blue, red, green, blue, red, blue, green, red, green, blue, green, blue.
Stop.
That's going to be fun at altitude.
Isn't that fun? If Charles beats David in a sprint, which man is the faster runner?
Charles. People like Ed Viesters and others who make a career out of doing these very high peaks without oxygen may have some long-term brain abnormalities. Some studies indicate that they do have very minor, subtle cognitive dysfunction, and it can be found only on psychometric testing. There's nothing obvious. And their MRI show that there can be structural changes. We have yet to have a good correlation between the MRI structural changes and the cognitive changes. That's going to take more time, more studies, more research like we're doing now.
Dr. Howard Donner treks into base camp where he will be stationed to monitor the health of the climbers.
Howard, you made it. Man, you're moving like an old man.
Not ready to speak in coherent sentences, okay? So go easy.
Welcome to base camp.
Thanks, man.
Good to see you. This is Zongbu.
Zongbu.
He's our Sirdar.
Howard.
He's our head surveyor.
Hey, good to meet you.
You know, you look blue. Here,
Thanks.
give me your hand. I got a pulse oximeter here.
I don't trust you with medical devices.
Oh, God. Look at you.
Huh?
You're alive.
Okay, good.
You know, your saturation level is 74, and your pulse is about 85.
All right.
A blood oxygen level of 74% would be alarming at sea level, but is normal for someone who has just reached 18,000 feet.
Well, would you like some tea?
Thanks, David.
We'll get you warmed up.
As Howard acclimatizes over the next few days, the level of oxygen in his blood should increase. If it doesn't, he may become ill with acute mountain sickness.
The early warning signs of mountain sickness are primarily headache, followed by dizziness, trouble sleeping, and lack of appetite. And then as it progresses, one develops a more severe headache, nausea and vomiting, and trouble with the balance or coordination. And that is the hallmark sign of progression to definite cognitive problems.
I've had altitude sickness before, and I know how bad a headache can get.
The two things that really affect you are shortage of breath and the lack of sleep.
Sometimes you rest and you feel okay, then you start walking and it's not okay.
After my head is gone too bigger like this, and
I experienced the most shocking headache I've ever had in my life, and I felt sick.
And night time I took 2 aspirin. After that, so never I felt myself to get headache. Now I'm fine.
If symptoms get worse, a portable hyperbaric chamber known as a Gamoff bag can help.
What's your altimeter say before you get in?
See, we're about 17,600 feet.
All right.
The bag is inflated to increase the pressure inside. This results in a higher density of oxygen molecules.
Doug, why don't you watch your altimeter and let us know in a moment what it's telling us.
Boy, we're dropping fast.
This simulates a descent of several thousand feet, where the ambient air holds more oxygen.
Doug, what's your altitude?
I'm at about 15,300 feet now.
At this altitude, pumping this bag up to 2 psi will bring a patient down to an altitude inside the bag of about 8,000 feet lower than we are here. Doug, what altitude are you at?
We're at 10,900 feet.
Most of the time, putting a patient in for a number of hours, they're going to get some benefit. Let's pretend Doug couldn't walk because of severe forms of mountain sickness. We put him in for 4 or 5 hours, and now he's able to walk down the hill under his own power. So that's a big help. Okay, Doug, I'm going to stop pumping and slowly deflate.
Within seconds, the pressure decreases and the patient returns to 17,600 feet.
Are your ears okay, Doug?
I'm fine.
Good, so he's back to base camp. You can tell by the fact that there's no more tension here.